Greg,
Yes.
before we kick off this week's podcast,
Yes.
random question for you and for the dads watching and listening to
Okay.
ponder.
All right.
First child, you find out that your wife or partner's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
You call your parents.
Mm-hmm.
What's the reaction from your father?
I don't want to do him a disservice by being too stereotypical, but I think that part of my brain tells me that it was something along the lines was, on balance, he was happy for me, but I think the initial reaction was something along the lines of, well, I guess you're in now, and sort of like, I guess you're in proper now. Thanks, Dad. I'll take that as a. You approve?
Yeah, that's
it was something to that.
That's right. Yeah, I just think it's a hilarious moment for because you talk to your mum. Oh, that's fantastic, darling.
Yeah.
You talk to your dad, and something always curly comes out.
Yeah.
And I kind of asked you that to share my story because this is all before the intro. But two quick stories I have to tell. My dad's story. I said, "Hey, Dad, you're going to be a grandfather," and the words that rang out of his mouth was, "Well, I'll be buggered. Here's your mother." And pass back the phone. And I was like a bit shocked, because we got a good relationship. Anyway, I talked to my mum. Oh, that's amazing, darling. Da-da-da-da. Thanks, mum. Hang up. And I sat there for like 30 minutes and then the phone rings again and it's my mum. And she says, oh, your dad wants me to tell you that he's really proud. And so I thought that's such a funny old school mentality of, in that moment, it's arguably their biggest moment. They're about to become a, grandfather. Yeah. Or at least they're on that path. And then my cousin, my uncle, he called his dad when it first happened. His dad goes to him, well, that's what happens when you shoot past the goalie.
I was going to say something to that effect.
Ridiculous.
You're just like, oh my gosh. We love them.
Yeah. Back for another edition of the RadDads podcast 2.0 or squared or whatever we want to call it.
Square root to the power of 12.
Power of dad.
To the power of dad. Yep.
But we've been pondering a couple topics that will need a bit of unpacking because, the role of a father does need a lot of unpacking. And there's good and bad things about this whole journey. And I guess what we've been trying to work out is how do we add positively to dads out there, maybe via our journeys as, reasonably successful fathers of a few kids between us. Yeah. But we've been talking about this idea of kind of male aggression, leadership, and I guess just kind of not misinterpreting this idea that a dad doesn't just equal the tough dude.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's that, I'm not sure whether either of us are properly ready to be wading into some of this stuff, but I think what's become really apparent is this idea that in today's world, it's really easy to fall into a content vacuum. This whole conversation came about was, doing the old doom scroll as you do, and you come across this dad content and these people that are talking about what it is to be a dad and, toxic masculinity, positive masculinity, all of this kind of thing. And I actually said to my wife, I was like, I started showing her some of the clips and I'm like, not for a second will I ever try and conflate this with the struggle that females have endured for, literally hundreds of years, thousands of years, whatever, in being oppressed. But I said to her, I was like, can you get a sense of why men's mental health is as bad as it is? Because the conflicting messages, just the sheer sense of being overwhelmed, and I felt overwhelmed, and I'm someone who probably has a reasonably well articulated view of things and knows what I believe in and what I don't. I would hate to think what it must be like for someone who's either new to the fatherhood journey or new to kind of just getting into wanting to step up into that role of being a dad and what it meant, and flip, like you're just like, wow, this is really, really overwhelming. And it was just a case of, man, like I sent you a few videos and we just started having this discussion, and it's sort of, this sense of, what do I do when my natural instinct is to be aggressive, is to be dominant and assertive, and sometimes, walk up to and cross the line, and how do I deal with those, I guess, which team do I choose to be on? Or is there some sort of team in the middle where I can kind of take bits from all of these philosophies and channel them into something productive? And I guess that's kind of where we find ourselves.
I mean, what were you seeing? What's the content that was kind of starting to spook you?
I don't know. I don't know about you. So a little, I guess, side journey for a second. You had boys first up. If I was to ask you, which were you the most anxious about having, boys or girls? Which way around would it be, and why?
I think my thought was I was kind of relieved to be having a boy, but I don't quite know why that was. Maybe it was because I had a good relationship with my dad, and I looked forward to kind of maybe making him proud that I could do it too, But if I think now, I would probably have preferred to have a girl first. My relationship with my 6-year-old is awesome. Now, it might just be because she's small, and I think I'm an awesome dad for small kids, and I'm a little bit. And it's interesting for me, as I've stated to all my friends, having teenagers. I just kind of have a bit of a challenge with another man pooing on my toilet, because I don't know, man. But there's also a thing too where my kids have a gap. So I had 2 boys quite close. Then there's like a 10-year gap or whatever it is. And then the little girl comes along. So it's also this little complete circle for me that I get to experience both.
Yeah.
But hey, I haven't reached pre-puberty. I haven't reached teenage. For girl, my boys are home dudes. They just want to stay at home and play their games, eat their noodles. And I'm like, I know they're going to suffer because of that in another way. But at this time, when I see, kids out there doing whatnot at all hours, I'm very happy that mine are home with me,
I mean, and I think it's just a really interesting place to start, because, different guys that I speak to have different feelings about which they're most anxious about, whether it be having a boy first, having a girl first. For me, I think about it and I go, I think there was some complexity. I probably had a little bit of a bumpier relationship with my dad initially. So I think there was some anxiety around having a boy first, because I was like, can I measure up? How's this going to work? But I think I felt a sense of relief when I knew I was having a girl first, because I thought that was simpler and more straightforward. But I also think, and I can see in sort of the wider discord amongst dads, that there's also this fear, or anxiety that comes with being what is it? What do they call themselves? A girl daddy. Because there's apparently, or so we've been led to believe, this kind of layer of other expectations around what it is, because you have to protect them and keep them safe and all of these other things. And I don't know, I guess I just began seeing some of this content coming down the pipeline at us going, man, I just wanted for us to maybe possibly deconstruct it a little bit and potentially offer an alternative view. Because in of themselves, some of these videos that I was watching weren't inherently, I could see the heart. I could see where the heart was coming from, what these dads were trying to communicate. But also now, having been dad to 2 boys and 2 girls, I am eternally proud of my girls. They will foot it with all of the boys. That, they are tough. They are resilient. My oldest came back from a broken back and, torn PCL, big injuries. But she's not a tomboy, they are as feminine and as whatever you want to, like, that this stuff almost doesn't matter. They are who they are. And they've got there because hopefully we've given them the tools to be able to be confident in themselves rather than, I guess, making their journey of development about me.
So were you kind of seeing content that was almost radicalizing this idea of like, you got to be the dad's dad, you know, it's your princess and you take care of the dramas. You beat up somebody that doesn't treat her like the princess, as opposed to, you know, whether you're, you know, whatever gender you happen to be. With me, it's about preparing you for the world and walking with you on your way.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're not in the business of calling other creators out. That is the last thing we want to do here. But I mean, I'm wondering whether we can drop
just how to dad. We hate him. No, just jokes.
Jordan, you're right.
He just goes. He's viral.
But I mean, I wonder whether we drop in the clip that we were sort of talking about and referring here, and have people have a look at it and just to kind of see what they think.
Your daughter might not want you to beat up her boyfriend, but she wants to know you would. And she wants to know you could. Yes, one day, you know, she's going to be someone's wife and she's always going to be her own woman, but she's also always going to be your daughter. I've always wanted my little girls to know that no matter where this life took them, they always had a home no matter where I was at. And then no matter what the circumstances or conditions, if they picked up the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, Daddy, I need you here and I need you here now, I'm there. I'm there. And they need to know that. Make sure that they know. No matter what happens, no matter what the conditions, no matter what the circumstances, no matter if even they think that you would be disappointed or ashamed at something, regardless of any of that, you love them. And the bottom line is that you will always be there to come and get them.
Well, first of all, I'm interested to kind of let yourself and the viewers just maybe sit in some of that for a while. But I think the thing that just struck me straight away, absolutely honourable and completely see 100% where he's coming from being able to be there for your kids. That is a non-negotiable. That is an absolute non-negotiable. That is, of course, that is exactly what you sign up for. And I wholeheartedly agree with the notion that instilling in your children the fact that whether they believe that mum or dad will be disappointed if they get a call, you know, like that kind of level of trust in that relationship, 100% agree with that wholeheartedly. I guess where things start to get a little bit murky for me is just a couple of things. My little girls will become women, and they'll become strong women, and they'll become strong women who lead their families. And I think, and it's just as much as it is my role to always be there for them, it is also being self-aware that I might grow with them. So yes, I will always be my daughter's dad, always, forever and a day, and to the day I die, and in all of eternity, I will be my daughter's dad. But the role I have to play in her life will change. The role that I have to play in always being there for her will not look the same as when she's 5 or 8 or 20 or 25 or 35 or whatever. And I have to be self-aware enough to go, I need to have a relationship with her that I can ask her what she needs, you know, and I'm prepared to do, you know, where old mate here is always be there. My always being there for my daughter is being prepared to have that conversation and to listen to the cues and to see the nuance and to know my place, to really reinforce that perspective of always being there for her. I think that's the first one that I sort of, you know, I think we just need to watch our language. And as much as our little girls will always be our little girls in our minds, in the world's eyes, they're not. And how much do we hold them back from being the woman that they're capable of becoming by holding on to that and not, I guess, you know, it's that fundamental human desire to see and be seen see your daughters for who they are. You know, to be able to see them for who they are and where they are now, I think is the really life-giving part of that. The other part that I wasn't quite following, and I think this is, you know, kind of where we sort of kicked off the conversation, was this potential conflation of protection versus intimidation or, you know, violence or whatever. I don't know about you, and, you know, maybe your daughter's a little bit young to properly understand that, but I know for a fact if my daughter does not want me to, nor does she have any expectation that I would beat up a boyfriend of hers, because in fact she would be incredibly disappointed in her father turning his back on his values and the things that he believes in and the things that he holds dear to in order to make a PowerPoint. Does my daughter know that I would protect her at all costs? Absolutely. If that involves getting into a physical altercation with someone, I'm there. Is my intent to beat someone up? Absolutely not. And words matter. You know, the nuance between those two situations, they matter because your kids see your actions. You know, what's the quote? You know, your thoughts become your words become your actions, and it's that idea of like your actions are a direct mirror to what you hold dear and to what you believe in, and ultimately what you believe in is the biggest tool set that your kids will take into shaping how they navigate the world. You know, their view of the world is ultimately informed by what we value and what we hold true. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's without kind of getting into the piling on somebody because we don't know the dude.
Exactly, yeah.
I guess my reflections are I'm not a fan of, I guess, the more traditional archetype that I'm the tough guy and the mum is the, you know, the good one, the good cop, bad cop. I think it's more like, and I guess maybe what we have to preface too is we run, you know, traditional, in a sense, families, a mum, dad, kids, but there's plenty of different makeups around the place now, you know? And so our viewpoint might not be suitable for all, but I'm with them until it's about the aggression because, one, I don't understand that. I don't come from an upbringing of aggression. I don't solve my problems that way. You know, maybe it would be easier if I was just really aggressive, but I haven't seen evidence that that's the case. You know, you look at some of the baddest, toughest dudes, you know, take UFC, for example, and they're the most controlled people, you know, in some ways because they have mastered that art. And I think maybe there's a bit of a judgment that to be a good dad, a protector, that you have to have those attributes too, which is why I think it seeps its way into his content, you know?
Yeah.
But I actually disagree fundamentally with the idea that I'm a protector. You know, I'm struggling to protect myself, you know, emotionally. And if we're probably honest, we all are. Who am I to protect somebody? I just happen to be older, you know, and I happen to have helped create you.
Yeah.
But that's really it. And they're lumped in with you as you're lumped in with them. And so, you know, I think that's why I'm very lucky, while we're all very lucky, if you are lucky enough to have someone who rolls with you, they have attributes that you don't have. There's many a time where my wife is way more aggressive than me, not to me, but at moments that need a sternness, not an aggression, but sometimes you need to say no. And it's very challenging sometimes if you're not a no person, you know, and I guess that goes through all parts. So, yeah, for me, I just wanted to also say that, you know, even though that picture, you know, the Superman type thing, it's, you know, it might be like, oh, you're so strong, you know, you can do all that stuff, but, you know, it is kind of a reference to Superman too, and I've said that to you offline, that he could destroy everything, the Superman character, but chooses not to. In fact, how he spends 50% of his time is the gentle Clark Kent. And I think that's the type of archetype which I think is interesting, you know. If you're going to talk about aggression, then be most aggressive at controlling that. And I don't think that is always encouraged. But also, hey, we've got to say that trauma gets passed on. So there might have been trauma in my family, but that didn't reach me. And that might have been a luck. That might have been, you know, parents had enough buffers emotionally and, you know, maybe monetary. That might have been that they were trying to break cycles. So that's not everyone's story. For some, it will resonate, you know. They'll be like, yeah.
And I think, and again, I think we're at pains to say, look, this is not a process of calling anyone out. But I think what I am at pains to say is that don't be passive in the consumption of the content that shapes your view as a father. I think if you are looking to external sources to find guidance and insight, it is on you, and it is not even an option. It's an obligation to critique that from all sides, you know, and to be able to go, all right, I see this dude and this resonates, this doesn't. And the encouragement is to just, I guess, regardless whether it's us, I mean, heck, tear our perspectives to shreds, unpack them, you know, apply them to your own context. What is, you know, whatever's going on in your situation. But again, I guess the reflection on the experience of sort of going down this rabbit hole is, please don't be a passive consumer of advice, especially when it comes time to things as precious as our children. And especially, I mean, again, especially when I think about being a father to a daughter, like there have been some incredible leaps forward and the opportunities that our little girls who will become women will be able to take on in this world. And I want to add to that, and I want to keep those rolling rather than creating a narrative that, despite the best intentions at this end, ultimately starts to undo all of the stuff at the other end, because we try and trap them again, because we make the parenting journey about us and my insecurities and my inabilities to deal with my own trauma and my own sense of self in the world. And we make parenting about making us the center rather than adding value and adding tool sets and skills and confidence to those little girls to become big and to go on and take on the world. You know, we were talking before about, you know, off air about it's almost the difference is would I answer the phone if my you know, my daughter's driving somewhere, she gets a flat tire, you know, there's option A, my daughter calls me to go and change the tire. Would I do that? Absolutely, I would do that, especially if she was in a dangerous situation where she was by herself. I would do that, you know, for context. I would do the same for my son. What would my aspiration for her as her dad be? That she would have the tool sets and the confidence, both literally and figuratively, to be able to take on that challenge herself and call me if she gets stuck. And again, that's not because I don't want the phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, but, you know, my girls are capable, they're strong, they've got a unique perspective of the world that we all miss out on if I try and make the parenting journey about me rather than them. Itchy nose.
You're crying. I also thought when you're talking about the content thing, director guy who's sitting doing the hard work behind the cameras, he asked me about what my sons watch online. And essentially I was happy to report that to the best of my knowledge, it's not Andrew Tate and the bullshit that goes on there, but you know, we're all getting attacked from this algorithm. And like you were telling me too, like watched a couple videos, then other videos pop up, and it's like, yeah, that's the challenge too, right? We might have people who really like this podcast, then they're going to be served other dad podcasts, and you can't curate everything, you know? So I think we're quite fair play zone, you know, this is probably the reason why you and I won't go viral, or at least by our choosing. Yeah. We might accidentally put our foot in it somewhere, but it won't be by just, you know, I guess, the hardcore clickbaity stuff. But yeah, man, it's attacking us from everywhere. And so although we're trying hard not to throw too much shade at other dads out there trying to articulate themselves, and he's mostly right, it's the aggression bit that we've picked up on to say like, hey, you're not the shining knight in armor coming to save the day. In fact, that's a front for something else.
The savior complex is a dangerous one.
But in saying that, we should throw shade on the BS content that gets put in front of our kids. And hey, it's really challenging. On the way here, I'm listening to a podcast with the director of Back to the Future, Robert Zemeckis, and he's talking about his parents took him to see Psycho as a kid. And he's like watching all the stuff play out. And, technically, if you were to write that down, you'd say don't do that. But it is interesting. There are gray zones. I see my young one watching some content that, does have kind of swear words in it. But I've watched it with her, and overall, I'm okay with it. But there are those words that creep in. And so I guess, again, your role as a protector or a family person is you can't shut the world out, but there are some hard lines.
Oh, exactly. And again, I think that even down to our conversation around, the whole AI video generated thing, which is an entire other conversation, entire other podcast. But I think the reflection from all of this is that and it's both awesome and terrifying and overwhelming all at the same time. But I think the opportunity for parents to be lazy and outsource their thinking to other people is gone. And you are now obligated to ensure that, if nothing else, you value conversation within your family. If you are not talking to your kids, if you are not talking to your spouse about what it is that you're consuming, what it is that is coming in through those four walls, and finding an agreement on that stuff, that is when you're going to get tripped up 10 out of 10 times. And so whether it's, you being able to engage your daughter in a conversation post watching that content to say, oh, what did you see? Oh, I saw people's bad words. Oh, yeah, well, what do we do as a family? It's that is the obligation. The obligation is not to find a team in a lane and stick to that at all costs and die on that hill. Your obligation has to be flipping talk, man. We're talking here. What in this weird sort of abstract thought that I have in my head, it's like, how would we implore dads that listen to this? Be the host of your own podcast in your own family. What does that look like? What does it look like for you to take on that mantle of, if it's almost like, what is it for me to try and have a podcast with my family, even if no one records it or listens to it? Have a chat, talk it out, find out what troubles people.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because there are traps in that too, because some people can't do that. They don't have emotional intelligence to do it. They're dealing with too much of their own baggage. I had a realization this morning that most likely my teenagers, my boys, they will have to find someone like me who's not their dad to kind of give them some advice to. And I think that really only works in the real world, so like a mentor or, maybe a boss or something like that at work. Because I recognize in my line of work, when I'm in spaces with young people, they see me differently to how my kids see me. And I probably put that mostly down to that's just the inbuilt thing. Your kids probably see you as a hero to a certain point, and then they see your flaws. They see you 24 hours a day, the bits where you think they're not listening and you're, saying to your partner, and so for them, there's a bit of context there. But also I think it's a fair thing in life too, where, you could maybe aim for, if you can't aim to, imagine yourself having a podcast with your family because you don't quite know how to pull that off, or your family environment doesn't happen. I reckon you could aim to provide spaces for your kids to be around those people who will be good for them. I think that's more achievable sometimes. If you can do it, awesome. But, a lot of parents can't talk to their kids. They don't have that skill set, or they've tried and it's too frustrating, especially when you talk to a teen, right? Like, they're rude. And I know for me, it's very difficult if someone speaks to me rude, I want to exit. But I sometimes think to myself, ooh, what am I saying if I'm getting out of there? Because in some ways I'm doing the opposite to what old mate on the video is doing. I'm not choosing to be aggressive in that moment. I'm getting out of there. And that's somewhat a coping mechanism for me, not understanding growing up without aggression. I actually don't know how to navigate that space. So I feel uncomfortable. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I do.
I think it's like it's a little bit like finding the perfect person in life. It's if you do a couple things like that, it solves other areas too. So if you can be a bit lucky or put yourself in a position to find somebody who just really loves you, a couple other things will get unlocked without you actively doing it. And I wonder if that's a bit like fatherhood too. If you see yourself as the protector or the boss, you might just be opening yourself up to a bit of can of whoop ass on you.
Yeah, and I think again, to the point of being able to let other people in. Yeah, I think there's some merit in that, but I guess there's still there's a leadership role in being able to go. I might not choose how my kids use the tools in the toolbox, and people can be tools in that toolbox, but I still get to choose the tools.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you aim towards that.
Yeah.
Because, it's your fault if you put your kid in front of a dodgy friend.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're older.
Yeah.
If you're going to talk hierarchies, you own that space because you could drive them there, And people make that mistake. We all know people who have been through that.
Yeah.
And I'm not coming down on anyone. I'm just saying that's actually where it gets hardcore. You've got to try and navigate that space with some of the unknowns, and creeps are good at hiding and everywhere.
And I think, again, that's where I do still come back to if you keep talking to them for as long as you can.
Absolutely.
And if you can have that conversation, you can stay engaged and you can,
For me, it's really important. Maybe it's because at the moment, a lot of our work is with young people. It's more like it's not what you say all the time, it's the space you create.
100%.
And I'll just tell you a little story. I'm moving house soon, and it's a bigger home. And I think that's going to actually help my environment, because at the moment for us to be all together, we're all together.
Yeah.
And to have a bit of partition space for people just to be.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's, it's like another thing, you don't get to choose that. And when we were younger and we were poorer and we had smaller places, we had a little bit more naivety and optimism that it would all work out, like the stories you shared in the other podcasts, and you're dreaming a bit more because you have to, you're hoping a bit more. But yeah, I've begun to see more about space and also I'm really trying to observe the young people I work with, to be really looking at their feedback, how they see you, and when is the right time to push them and not. And sometimes it's easier with other people's kids.
Oh, you inherently have way more permission.
Yeah, and so you got to really guard that too. And it's I don't know the right way around, but I guess that's why I would say you can actually choose the people you hang out with. You can't always choose everything, but you can have good mates, and we love having a good mate in this country. Call your mate. I just think if you can have a good mate, then a lot of those things will maybe happen without you having to try so hard. Because I think the thing I don't like about that video too that we watched is I don't want to throw too much shit on him, but thanks, Captain Obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, of course I got to love my kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's all of the things that it's like the beef I have with most online content is it all works great till the wheels come off.
Yeah.
And as a parent, the wheels come off.
All the time.
All the time. Yeah. So you've got to really say you're probably at 40% of your best for most of the time.
Yeah, and again, I think it's just that it comes back to 2 feet on the ground when the alarm goes off in the morning. Am I prepared to show up? And who is it? Brene Brown talks about that misnomer that relationships are supposed to be 50-50. And and I think parenting is probably not too dissimilar, but the ratio is a little bit different. But she blows that apart and she says, look, it's actually 100-100, and the conversation is how much you got today. Oh, I got 30, sweet. You got 60, sweet. Where's the other 10 going to come from? And you're showing up with whatever you got. I think I've mentioned it before. I'm fortunate enough to be doing a bit of work with the mighty Kevin Mialamu, and he talks a lot about it in his gym. 100% of what you got left, and that's the mantra when they're in their fitness classes. And again, parenting is no different. There are days where 2 feet are going to go on the floor, and you got 10% left.
Absolutely,
but you're doing good. You're doing an awesome job if the 10% you got left is what you show up with. And then tomorrow there's going to be 40, and then the day after that there could be 70. And just know that, I guess that's probably the takeaway, is to know that every day is going to be different, and there's no 2 days that are going to be the same. But if you know in yourself, you're showing up with what you got. No,
you have to show up. There's kind of no way out of that. The only way you screw this up is if you bolt or you leave.
Yeah.
You might think that, look, if you have serious challenges, then you might have to do that.
Yeah.
But like if you just kind of regular run of the mill, like you'd hope most of us are, with a lucky country which provides enough support, most of the time. I'm certainly acknowledging people fall through the cracks all the time. Your job is to just keep going, So that's why I think I get a bit triggered when I hear, let's just follow these steps and you'll be right. Until, that's like the nasal breathing. Yeah, just breathe through your nose and you'll be happy. Well, you got a thing septum. You can't even breathe through your nose. So where's that manual?
Yeah.
And it's like, what if you grew up and you got the shit kicked out of you? How do you navigate that? And how do you not pass that on? It's certainly not obvious, but I like what you're saying. Whatever you got left, try your best, turn up. And that's something that I've got lots of fears in my life, but it was super obvious to me that if I can, I will just keep trying. Whatever little wins you can take them.
And I think it's that thing is, how often do our kids suffer as a result of our own doubts?
Dude, absolutely.
And it's like, I guess just having the confidence to know that your kids, if you show up with what you have, will see what you have, and they will gladly accept it. But if you show up filled with doubt that somehow you're not enough on that particular day, that's what they see, and that's what they take away, And
it will shape them. It might be that your biggest insecurities give them tools or tips on where to head, and I guess you got to be careful, because you might have a whole life of your kids trying to fix you, and like there's a certain part of that you can't get away from, and I guess that's the guts, but it's super important that we try not to, think that we're awesome and that we're just going to go out there and fix it all. That most likely we've all got something that's chewing at us. And, it's funny at our age too, because we're starting to see the past. We're starting to be able to put it into chapters. And
almost at the middle of the book.
Absolutely. Someone described it as the first 40 years as pluses.
Yeah.
and the next 40 is minuses, and they mean that metaphorically, like you start losing people.
Yeah.
You know, you might have a few losses in different areas. So what do you do with that, you know? And I know for me, and probably the same for you, and even dads that are going to become dads, yeah, you get to live a little bit through their journey. You know, I'm looking at my 18-year-old and I'm like, I say to my wife the things I don't like, and then she's like, yeah, that's how you were. And I'm like, oh, yeah. But it's not really me. It was me.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Is that it's not really him. It's just him now.
It's a version of.
Yeah. And he will be whatever happens for him. So.
Yeah. And I think that's ultimately, that's the takeaway is, well, that's the takeaway I'd love out of today would be, this is cathartic for us. You know, this conversation is like, wow, there's a lot. And some, you know, there's parts of it that make complete sense, and there's parts of it where we're just going, all right, well, we need to get it out rather than then to be able to sort of hear it play out and go, all right, what do I think about that? Okay, yeah, cool. And again, I guess it's just it's an acknowledgement to people that might be watching that their brain's full and they're sitting almost paralyzed going, oh, flip, I don't, you know, that sense of being overwhelmed because I don't know where to start and I don't know how to do this. And just, again, the encouragement would be find that cathartic conversation with someone and just start talking. And it's okay if it doesn't make sense. It's okay if it's a bit like, what on earth was that about?
What's helpful if they're interested in the chat too.
Exactly. I mean, talking at someone.
That's right. Yeah. So
you might find
if you want it the other way, get therapy. Because they're paid to sit there and take on your stuff. But you're right. It is cathartic. It's talk therapy. That's why we love podcasting, because you have a vehicle to be able to talk. That's what I mean. It's probably not that easy to know where a parent should engage in conversation. And remember, we were teenagers once too. Sometimes the worst thing is like, you want me to talk to you? That's the boringest thing I've ever heard. You know, I'll talk to you when I need you, Dad. And that's fine too. I distill it right down to not love. I think sometimes that's too vague. But if you can give your family or your child or even yourself a sense of belonging, you know, I can't talk for everyone, but I knew I belonged somewhere growing up. And I wonder how that helped me with my confidence, especially when I was paying out emotionally.
It would have helped massively.
And if you grow up knowing where you belong, which is totally controllable, you know, like you might not get on with your kids, but do they know that they belong to you?
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I just had because the old scatterbrain ADHD brain goes other places, but I think to wrap things up, I was reminded of another video that I watched that was, I think for me, probably more so the embodiment of the dad that I want to be to my daughters. And that was, there was this basketball game and these girls were playing basketball. And this girl got called into the game and she went out on the game and she played for a bit and struggling to kind of score any points and whatever, hits her first bucket and just turns around and bolts straight off the court, makes a beeline straight for the stands, grabs her dad and gives her a massive hug. And I think, like, for me at least, me and my daughters, and I don't know about you and yours, or you guys and whatever. But for me and my daughters, I want to know that I am their single biggest cheerleader at every game and every challenge. I'll be standing on the sideline, ready to hug them, to hold them, to cheer for them, to pass them tools, wherever life might take them. And if that is the role that I get to play for the rest of my life, I know I'm confident in knowing I will have done okay.